back hear me? This is a live test. And the ladies and gentlemen in the rear of the building, or at least this room, hear me right here. Good evening. Okay. I've been asked to say a few words of welcome, and I'm going to accept that challenge. It was probably a year ago that somebody suggested to me that they're going to put on an Atari show, and I have to admit in advance, just to be truthful with everyone, I was skeptical. But as things came together, I looked around at what was going on, and I couldn't hold back anymore, and I had to pitch in. My name is Don Thomas, and I was with Atari for quite a few years at the tail end of Atari's. Thank you very much. Yes. And there were some key people that I want to recognize. I don't want to take a lot of time talking because we're here to have fun. But I want to say, a special thank you to a few people, and actually there's a lot of people that should be thanked, but there's some key people that need to be right now. Rich Tsukiji, and I'm still working on being able to pronounce his name properly. There you are. Did I say it right, sir? Is Brad here? Brad's still setting up. Quite a few people are still setting up. These gentlemen are probably the forerunners of making this happen for you. You are here because of those two gentlemen. Soon as runner-ups are two other gentlemen that need to be recognized. They're probably also running around quite rapidly trying to get things together so that you're happy tomorrow as well. And that would be Mr. John Hardie and Mr. Keita Iida. And they're probably across the room. I don't see them here raising their hand or taking any bows, so I suspect that they're still running around. Please, as you enjoy yourself this evening and enjoy yourself tomorrow and enjoy yourself Sunday, these people have worked very, very hard. There's other people too, but these are probably the foremost people you should want to step back and recognize. Any joy that you take looking at something of a prototype, of looking something that's still shrink wrapped and you just can't believe that it's lasted this long, it's here because of those four gentlemen. And I really urge you to just take a moment, shake their hand, and just say thank you. They will genuinely appreciate it. For now, I hope they'll accept an applause. I've been asked to very quickly mention that each and every one of you are entitled to the program, and I've got a quick glimpse at it. It's quite impressive. You're all entitled to one. Your badge is the redemption key for that. Tomorrow, as you enter the show, show your badge, and one of those programs will be presented to you. Is that accurate? Yes. Okay. And I think aside from that, I invite everybody to see the keynotes tomorrow. Mine's at 10:30. I probably will be more verbose tomorrow, so be forewarned. The show opens at 10. Yeah. And other than that, anybody that's got a drink in their hand, please raise it up, have a toast, and have a great time. Welcome to the world of Atari 98.
Everyone say hi. Hi. We love Atari. Yes, we do. We hate the Trammels. Just kidding. because hey, wow, that's excuse me, promise. Excuse me, promise. Come on.
They did say they were going to come move it, so, but they told me that a half hour ago, so I finally just moved it myself.
Next, I'm waiting for the guys from France to come in. Oh, he's here, but he said they were in line. Brad, one who's on the other side, you want me to go get him? Yeah, please. Well, 130X. They got the...
Our next keynote is one of the true pioneers of video game design and programming. While at Atari, he designed Night Driver and Missile Command, along with Asteroids and Space Invaders, really vaulted the Atari VCS to prominence. And then he co-founded Imagic, where he produced two of the three most popular games, Demon Attack and Cosmic Arc. Demon Attack sold 3 million copies, was it, Mr. Bull? And he was the Billboard's 1983 Game Designer of the Year. And his career didn't stop there. He was one of the very first pioneers in online gaming, where he designed games for American Online. And later, he was one of the first involved with CD-ROM interactive entertainment. He designed Sewer Shark and Night Trap, believe it or not, in 1986 to 88, which later found its way on the Sega CD in the early 90s. So he was really ahead of his time. Later on, he started PF Magic, where he did balls for the 3DO, and then he designed Dogs and Cats, which each sold over 2.5 million copies. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Rob Fulla.
I just bought one of these, Night Driver, and there's nothing like buying your own game. There's something about it. What's weird about buying your own game is when you have to basically, bargain with the guy, and you don't want him to come down in price. You really want him to keep it at $50. You don't want him to come down because it's like, I'll just throw it in. No, I want to pay top dollar. I'm really going to talk a couple things. I'm going to go over some definitions of words that I use to talk about games that may or may not be words that you guys use, but these are the things that I think about what makes a game work. And the first is the notion of premise. Is that a term that people here know what a premise is? Premise is like in a movie. A premise is the assumption. It's the basic guts of the movie. That's what you assume that the audience likes. And a premise is typically very short, and it's the real DNA. The premise of Star Wars is good conquers evil. That basic premise is the basic nuts and bolts of the movie. And that premise goes over and over and over again, every action adventure. I just thought The Avengers is a terrible movie, but they have the same basic premise. Good conquers evil. Any bad guy movies, Scarface, the premise is crime doesn't pay. You always show a movie about a bad guy who dies at the end, right? That's the basic deal. So those are the deep storylines of a movie, and games have the exact same thing going. And the beauty of the early Atari was we figured out all the premises back there. The first 5 years of Atari figured out, I think, the basic 5 premises of first of which I put into Night Driver, which is, have you ever played Night Driver? Everyone knows about Night Driver. It's the same as pole position, it's the same as Grand Prix, and I was just over at GameWorks, and guess what? Nothing's really changed. They got 18 VR stations in a row, and you're playing the same premise. The premise of all these games is basically go fast. That's the basic premise, right? And that game, Go Fast, is going to be, it worked 10 years ago, it worked 20 years ago, and I guarantee 30 years from now, we'll have the same guys here, we'll be really old, we'll be sitting around here, it'll all be VR, but the same basic game will be working, go fast. Just in the car, go fast. Don't crash, whatever, that will go. That's that class, so that's premise number one. Premise number two, you got Pong, Breakout, Frogger, Tetris. The premise of all these games is basically anticipation. Those games are all about waiting for that little thing to get there and now. And that's the basic deal that's worked in all those games. It still works. The game Space Invaders, Galaxian, Phoenix, Robotron, Centipede, Demon Attack. Anyone know the premise of those games?
Kill.
Yes, kill everything. You're gonna die. Kill them before they kill you. But those games, they work. They've always worked. They're always going to work. You know, you put a bunch of shit up there. You got to kill it all. Pac-Man has a really difficult premise. A lot of people don't get it. Does anyone know the premise of Pac-Man? The deep play pattern of Pac-Man, why it works?
Finish screen.
Huh?
Finish screen.
Anyone know?
Eat your vegetables.
The funnest part of Pac-Man is what?
Eating the power play.
The power play, right. It's turning the tables. Pac-Man is about turning the tables. Pac-Man is about, I'm helpless, I'm powerful. That's why the game works. And that may be one of the reasons women like that game. I don't know. But there's a certain deep connection to that feeling of being helpless and then being strong. That makes Pac-Man work really well. It hasn't worked in a lot. You haven't seen that play pattern in a lot of games. It's really powerful, actually. Pac-Man is really the one that brought it straight. And then Adventure, King's Quest, Myst, Ribbon. Does anyone know the premise of those?
Search.
Yeah, it's treasure hunt, basically. And the excitement of finding the old adventure game, right, with Warner Robinette's game when you find the Black Castle, that is just as exciting 20 years ago as going into Ribbon and finding a new world. You know, when you go underground, there's not one bit of difference. It's treasure hunt. You find the new thing. So I'm pretty convinced those five play patterns. You go fast, you anticipate, you shoot everything, you turn the tables, and you do a treasure hunt. Those 5 basic patterns were discovered, I believe, back in the first 5 years of Atari. And I don't think we've seen a new game that doesn't involve those 5 that's any good. I don't think so. I mean, just go down the list. When you have your premise, your play pattern, on top of that you lay your gameplay, which is most people here are, people here are obviously fans of gameplay. And the old lesson in Atari that was Nolan would yell at us over and over again was, you got to make it easy to learn and difficult to master. Does that ring a bell? Right, that was the basic Atari thing. And I used to say, easy to say, hard to do. That was the questions. The old Atari, when I was there, 79, 80, 81, the culture of the company really made it what made these games work. And the reason was because the culture was so loose. You basically had a setup where you had lab benches set up, and you had your programmers who were individual authors, basically, and you worked at a lab. You have a lab bench, so you weren't working in the office. Your game was up there for public dunking every day. And you sat there, you put your game up there, and it was all peer review. It was all basically, it was the guys, or the guys and one girl, I think. But you basically went to lunch every day, and you came back from lunch, and if the game was fun, guys would stand around someone's PlayStation and play their game. And that was how you knew it was a good game. And if no one was playing your game basically was bogus. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was very brutal, very simple system, but it only worked because it was all public. There was no privacy. And so you quickly knew what game was good and what game was no good. And if a game came out, it was because people were playing it. If no one was playing your game, the guy who was doing that game realized my game sucks. And he would have to either lose it or get it better. And that's really why it worked, because the winners came bubbling right up to the top. And there were beautiful examples examples of how games got designed. The best was Tempest, which I'm watching out here. Tempest is a beautiful game. And it started by the guy who made Missile Command, Dave Toyer, who was the original designer of Missile Command. And he wanted to do 3D Space Invaders. So he sat, and it took him about a year to do 3D Space Invaders. And 3D Space Invaders is basically, as you'd imagine, the monsters would come at you like this, and they'd come marching down. And it was there was a lot of difficulties with the game. There was screen real estate was a big problem. And the monsters looked great. They were vector monsters, but the game never played well. And it just basically sucked. And it was there, and it was there, and finally he couldn't take it anymore, and we were teasing him so much about it. And it was very much, it was his decision. He just trashed it one day, and 4 weeks later he showed us Tempest, which Tempest is basically 3D Space Invaders, but the monsters are not monsters, they're just little line segments. And the constraints where he just built these little wells. And again, he would never have in a million years sat down and just dreamed that game up on a piece of graph paper and said, here, he started out as one game, and it didn't work, and after a year of, no one playing his game at lunchtime, he basically said, I can't deal with this anymore. Here, we play this game, and we'll play this game, so that was the Tempest game.
Okay, so I'm here with Steve from Wiztronics. How you doing? Okay, Steve's putting together the Lynx Vision, which is the Lynx to TV adapter. So, how long have you been in development on this?
7 months. 7 months.
7 months?
7 months.
And when do you expect to have it finished and available to people?
12 weeks from today. So we are by the end of November.
End of November?
Yeah, be ready to ship.
And what's the price point?
$150.
$150?
$150 as an external.
As an external. What about the internal?
The internal, I don't know if we're going to release. Not going to release it. I've been explaining to everybody. It's the current drawer as an internal unit is too much. I'm getting pressure from Brad from Best Electronics to do the internal, so that might change. Right now, we're concentrating on an external version.
Okay. And you had mentioned doing it as a Lynx box, as standalone.
I'm going to suggest that when I get back to New York, we have a meeting on Thursday. I'm going to suggest that we incorporate the Lynx chipset within our box, make it a standalone Lynx tabletop unit. No LCD.
And what type of controller would it use?
Jaguar joystick.
And how long do you think it would take to put that together?
Probably about a night. If the funds are there to do it, probably inside of a month.
And what would the price point be for that?
Probably under $200.
And well, on top of the Lynx adapter, you're also doing the Falcon music mount for the rack case.
Well, the rack case has been out for quite some time. The only thing we're working on new is a replacement for the Falcon. So that we won't really get into real detail. We're hoping that before the end of the year to have a replacement machine. No final decision's been made. That I can just tell everybody to check the website, www.wiztronics.com, and that'll tell everybody what they want to know.
Next people up are very distinguished in my opinion. They've been here since day one. They founded probably the first video game magazine, Electronic Games. They followed up with a later version of Electronic Games. I guess their credits include Arcade Express, the EG Hotline, video games, and computer entertainment. And currently working on a website, InsideGames.com. And if you don't know who I'm talking about now, you better start rereading your old magazines. So without any further ado, I'd like to present Arnie Katz and Joyce Worley, two of the original three founders of EG.
Well, actually, Joyce being the shy type.
That's me.
That's what she said. She'd beat me up if I didn't say that. I'm going to actually give a little talk here, and then both Joyce and I will be answering your questions. First, I want to say how honored we are to be here today. I think that World of Atari is a landmark in the history of electronic gaming fandom. I can't tell you how impressed I am to see the level of interest, the level of knowledge, the level of perception of what those games were and what they meant. I can also see that there are a lot of people who, unlike Joyce and I, did not play them when they were new, but have come to them as a classic expression of gaming. And I think that as we look forward to bigger and better and more inclusive inaugurations of this convention in future years, I think this is something that can grow to be a real voice for the classic gamer. And I think we all know that classic games are in an equivocal legal position in some ways. And I think that we all know that if the gamers unite and make their needs known, make themselves visible, that we will probably get a better shake than if we let the corporations and the government and the courts, who know very little about games and even less about why we play them, dictate these policies. I think it's very fitting that this convention is themed to Atari. Atari was a magical company, both for society as a whole, and I must say for Joyce and I as individuals. Atari transformed a toy, which frankly they invented, Pong and so forth. They transformed a toy into a hobby. And they transformed me from a guy who wrote about supermarkets and Joyce from an insurance secretary into, along with Bill Kunkel, the world's first electronic gaming journalists. And there was a Pong machine right in front of the arcade, and I guess you'd say a place of honor on an end cap. I remember Joyce and I standing there by the hour and playing Pong. I won. As we sat there night after night, playing Air Sea Battle, playing the other very early Atari games, Bill and I realized that for the first time, there was something to write about. We conceived the idea of a column called Arcade Hour, which began running in Video Magazine. And this was the first time anybody reviewed video games professionally. And from that column grew the first magazine ever devoted to video and computer games, electronic games. And from that magazine has grown the entire field of electronic gaming journalism. And none of it would exist without Atari and what they did in 1978. Again, I want to thank you for inviting us. I hope that you will invite us back in future years to your conventions. I think that there are a lot of things, a lot of areas that all of us fans of vintage games can enjoy and explore together. Thank you very much.
Hey Jerry, there's a rumor that's the redesigned Jaguar they're going to try and bring back.
No, that's right here.
Yes, this is the new Jaguar 2.
This is the new easier to use controller.
So this is the new
two sticks built on.
This right here is the new Hasbro Jag 2. Okay? Integrated. You can't see right now because I'm really not supposed to be showing this to you, but this actually has a flip-up DVD player in it. It's got a new version of the Jag Links, which works, okay? And instead of using those crappy Jag controllers, they went back to using the regular Atari controllers. And this is a new, like, sensory joystick. You just move your hand over. It was made specifically for Battlesphere, which comes packed in with this, by the way. Really? Yes. now that the game is the game complete?
The game is indeed complete.
Battlesphere is finished. We've said that on camera now.
Okay. And since it's on TV, we all know it's true.
Absolutely. I
So-
believe everything.
How long do you think it's going to take you to get from now to where people can get out and play it and order it?
Well, that's sort of one of those nonlinear questions. There's a very hard first step followed by a very easy second step. We have to get this thing encrypted. Atari is gone. Hasbro owns what's left of Atari. Nobody knows what's really going on. As soon as we get it figured out, it will be encrypted. After that, it's a couple weeks and it's available.
All right. And do you plan to follow it up with any other Jaguar or PC-related software?
Will work.
Jaguar, unless we had funding, no.
If some crazy guy out there wants to hand us $500,000 to do another Jaguar game, we'll do a Jaguar game. We'll do a TRS-80 game. But the key word is funding.
What did you spent a long time doing the development of the game. Do you think that you've tapped the Jaguar's potential?
What do you think?
I know that I've heard you say things about how if you could do the polygon engine over, there are certain things you would do to make it faster.
I think-
So, no, but it would be a many-month endeavor.
If we had 100 years to write a Jaguar game, we could probably make the game twice as fast. If we had 1,000 years, we might be able to make it twice as fast plus a little bit. I guess that probably sums it up.
When did you first play Star Raiders?
Star Raiders, 1979 or so?
Right as it came out?
Yeah.
Okay. On an 800 or a 400?
800.
Okay.
I saw that game and I realized I'm going to be saving a lot of money and not spending my allowance for a very long time. I'm going to own one of these things.
Back when it was $60?
Yeah, I believe so.
$59.95 or
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
I had to get the money for the 800. I didn't have a disk drive or a tape drive because I wanted Star Raiders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you, during your Battlesphere development, did you still go back to play Star Raiders just to remember?
Absolutely. You want to get a feel
Yeah.
of how a game
Yeah.
flows, and that is the best space battle game ever done, in my opinion.
Still.
Yeah, I mean, sure, they've beaten the graphics, and I really like TIE Fighter, but if you want to get a game that just grabs you and pulls you in, that's the one.
Yeah.
It's like Mule. Mule's the one that pulled you out of it. I missed the photo op when you two hugged because you staged another one.
64-bit kid! So what are you doing now?
Well, right now I'm freelancing as a musician. I'm also finishing my PhD in applied math. Scott, on the other hand.
I work at DM Labs, and what I'm working on, I could tell you about, but then I'd have to kill everyone. And since you're probably watching this on TV, I don't know who you are.
That would be bad.
That'd be very bad.
Next two gentlemen up are both former Atari alumnus, and I think you'll be very happy with what they have to say today. One of the gentlemen is the man responsible for the creation of the 2600, 5200 trackballs. His nickname over the years is Trackman. The other gentleman was involved with the some say ill-fated, I say cool, Atari 2000 prototype, which I think you'll get a chance to see here. But I'm going to let them go more in depth about what they did and what they've done over the years. And so let me introduce to you Mr. Jerry Jessup, Mr. Dan Kramer.
Jerry and I worked in the hardware lab together for a couple of years or so. I was hired in a little bit before him, and a lot of people sort of fantasize about, wow, was that a neat place to work? And then sometimes people get let down. I can tell you it was a fantastic place to work, and it wasn't our imagination that we were doing some of the coolest, funnest, neat stuff that we've ever encountered. And yeah, it was a circus all day long, every day. But we got the work done and we turned out product. Sometimes good product, sometimes okay product, and sometimes disastrous product. And it still went out. But overall, I think the legacy was pretty darn good. And getting the trackball into production didn't seem to be as scary as getting it officialized and created as a product. In order to show what it could do, I started dropping over the place. And this is one of, I believe I have two of these. This is essentially a composite prototype hardware kludge that not only plays on 5200 with a 15-pin connector cable, it also has an 9-pin connector cable, and this will plug also into the 800. And this will play on the 800. It not only has the equivalent of all the 5200 controls, like the start, pause, reset, and it has 3 fire buttons for playing on the 800, and a switch that flips it over. There's your keypad, stolen from a VCS, and this is a coin-op centipede trackball assembly. On the side here is the actual circuit board that I designed and etched in our lab etching room, which was sort of a toxic waste dump, but we managed to keep it from blowing up.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty scary in there. And so these are the kind of things that had to be done in order to get this turned into something that would work. Once I had several of these going, the software had one, and I had one in the lab, and I was using one for handout promotion and stuff. The industrial design group wanted to show what it could be as an actual physical embodiment, so they built these, well, they had several nicknames for like hog-outs and design models and so on. It's a visual model made out of machined plastic and parts that are not shot in a mold, just to show what the thing's going to look like, to get a feel for it, the ergonomics, the physical size, and the appearance. And they do their best to make it a cosmetically appealing item. But that wasn't enough for me. This is the original first-off hog-out prototype made by Industrial Design Department at Atari for the 5200 trackball. They made this. They made one also that was only a one-sided model, which only included one keypad and one set of fire buttons, where the right hand would play the ball and the left hand would do the controls, and there was nothing here. It was a little more shortened and elongated. So it discriminated against left-handed game players. And I have been reading letters in gamer magazines already about left-hand game players who felt really left out and irritated because every product that came out discriminated against them. As a result, the single-sided trackball model conveniently vanished, and the dual-sided one was everywhere. And as time went on, people forgot about the single-sided one, and this became the standard, regardless of the additional cost involved in putting all this extra plastic and components on this side. And that was one of the other achievements I felt was very important. Nowadays, it is still a continuing issue, and I think that to be able to provide a non-discriminating controller for as many people as possible is one of the real achievements you can do when you want to interface a human being to any kind of a game machine, computer, mechanical device, or anything like that. So I took this thing, and it was just a piece of plastic that you look at, and I said that's not good enough, and I actually built working electronics into it. I freed up the glued-in fire buttons, set them up with dome switches just as best I could make it, and we actually took this to trade show for demo and had it on display for gameplay and let people hammer away at it for 2 days. And it survived. I took it back to the lab and reworked it and made it okay, and within a couple of months or so, the actual molds off the tool were coming in, so I began building prototype plastic ones and handing them out everywhere I could. The actual production of the trackball trailed the release of the 5200 by a short period of time. But there was enough consciousness in the software group to put the compatibility factor in for the games that we felt would play well with the trackball. And that essentially made it so that it was retro-compatible for games that had already been released, which I also thought was one of the main things that made it a great value for anybody who bought this off the shelf when they already had the console and the pack-out controller.
First of all, Dan is way too modest about the trackball. Do you get the impression he's real proud of it? I'm jealous because he actually got to work on something that was really cool, and it came out. And I worked on stuff that sucked and never came out, or the company collapsed before it was about to come out. So I'm kind of jealous. But there was a universal hatred for this controller at Atari. Okay? Nobody liked this controller. And they coined a phrase. You ever hear the phrase checks in the mail? Well, the phrase there was, it's only a prototype. The finished version will work perfect.
When's the finished product coming out?
Good question. and I'm scared to even use his name. Actually, a really great guy designed this, nicest guy in the world, but didn't play video games. That was the problem. Didn't play video games. And what happened was, the remote control VCS, the 2700, which I don't know if you've seen it in the museum or not, started a very disastrous trend at Atari. And here's the remote control VCS controller. And it started a trend of, let's forget about what the purpose of playing a video game is, which is to play a video game. They forgot human engineering. In fact, we'd bring this up to people in engineering, and then when it didn't sink in, we would just mock them and start making fun of them. And we would walk around with our hands like this, because if you put your hands out, they go out like this. Well, these controllers are designed to be held like this. And you know, 2700, 5200, Pro line, they couldn't get away from this. And what happened was, it was no fun. The games stuck. Now this controller right here, the interesting thing about it, monetarily, because when this came out about 82, 83, people at Atari, especially in engineering, were pretty much, a lot of them were driven by monetary motivations. And I can tell you that shoveling money on people doesn't motivate them, nor does it promote good products. It certainly didn't work for VCS Pac-Man. And I'll tell you, the truck was big that backed up to Todd Fry's office. But the guy who did his controller got 12 patents into it. Each patent was worth $1,000, right?
2,000, at least from what I know. 1,000 when the patent is filed, received by the patent office, they acknowledge that they've got it in their queue. 1,000 more when they actually finish the process and grant the patent.
Yeah.
2K.
So $24,000 for designing something backwards. Okay, because there's tons of gimbal style analog controllers, and you use them on RC radio, cars, stuff like that. And we would actually hack those units in here, and they'd work perfect, and they'd sell center. And we kept, bringing up the subject. Why aren't we doing this? Why are we doing this analog transaxle type arrangement on this controller? And now to get back to your question, which I almost forgot about. Why did this controller look like this besides being, sideways fire buttons? Did you ever see the ads of the Intellivision controllers versus the Atari controllers? We have 16 positions versus Atari's 8 and a keypad. Well, we've got the keypad. We don't have 16 bits, we have 360 degrees of non-self-centering, non-precise analog control, so it'll look better in an ad. But as you all know, this thing was a horrible product. And quite frankly, Dan and I were scared because we wanted to keep our jobs. And we knew that things were going down. We knew that there was going to be a backlash with stuff like this. Actually, I worked on a lot of real cool projects, a lot of cost reduction projects, single-sided VCS. They're really driven by cost reductions. And one of the things that people really need to think about Atari, after Nolan Bushnell left, and Nolan left in early '79. He had sold the company, but he left in early '79. There was really no new product development that ever came out of Atari after that. Everything was a rehash, repackage of the same old stuff until the ST arrived with the Tremels. There was nothing new done. Everything was repackaged. And Atari also Atari never killed a product before it was completely done. So they wasted maximum amounts of money and maximum amounts of engineering time and talent. And that was really the key. Everybody was distracted chasing little pet projects that some guy in marketing thought would be a good idea, waste maximum amounts of dollars, blow a year working on this when you should have been doing something more productive. They should have been working on a 16-bit system, should have had a new chipset for the 800, but instead working on stuff like this. The CX2000, and how this came about I only learned the true story last year at Nolan Bushnell's house when I got a chance to meet Steve Mayer, who was sort of the father of this. And Steve Mayer was one of the original designers of the 2600. And I had never met him until last year because he moved out to New York and worked in a New York design lab for Atari. And he kind of threw out an idea to people that, you know, if you cut a lot of the plastic out of the 2600 and you reduce the packaging, that's where you're going to save money. Because if you ever open up a 2600, there's nothing to take out of there to save money. You can't get rid of the TIA, you can't get rid of the processor. There's just a handful of components anyway. The thing's cheap to make, so you reduce the size of the packaging and the pack out. So somebody in marketing gets this idea. Oh, what Steve means is make a very flat console and stick the controllers on it. Now clearly, this product never could have been sold. But we were forced to work on it. There's even a custom chip in here called the combo hybrid chip, which is actually a conglomeration of the 6532 and the 6507 put onto a little daughter board which plugs into a 48-pin socket because we were so short on real estate board space, because we couldn't use anything out here. We had these switches which were right in the middle of the shield, and I designed the combo hybrid chip, and then I almost lost my hair because of that, because it was kind of a big task, and the senior project engineer kind of gave it to me to do, and I had to work with Rockwell, who had the dies for the chips, and I did this design and layout, and we got our first samples, and none of them worked. None of them worked. Couldn't figure it out. I worked 48 hours straight, tracing things, trying to figure out, why am I so stupid? Why does this not work? And then the next week I found out from the guy that I got the parts from, he says, oh, you needed dies that worked? We thought you just wanted to fit things up. But getting back to this, when after all this work had been done, they then decided, let's do a focus group test on it. And I guess it didn't do real well. They wouldn't really tell me. But the guys in marketing were pretty embarrassed. But they had a backup plan. And the backup plan was, well, if a normal human being can't play this thing, maybe an infant could. So that's why you see some of these brown and some of them blue. In fact, that's why if you look in the museum, you see a blue one. Because what they did is some guy had a harebrained scheme. Let's paint it blue with yellow fire buttons. And if you notice, the kids' controllers came out blue. And let's do a kids pack out. And I don't know what happened. I think the guy eventually.
Okay, now also when you get on one bank, it opens the return lane on the bottom. So for one pass through, you get instead of losing the ball down the side. Wait. Yeah, for a few years. Yes, it shots don't work really well unless the game is level. It's pulling on the right really bad right now. When it's done, it really cooks. But by the time he finished this design, he had multi-ball, multi-level games out like Black Knight and Zero. See that orange light flashing there? The game is counting hits on the slingshots. Just like Space Invaders counted and then put the spaceship across in the back. He stole that from Space Invaders. So after 5 more slingshot hits, it moved to the right for 5 more, and then it would go away for another 27 hits, I think.
No, just leave that right there. I have all the original prints and documentation for this too. I've got them up at my warehouse. I'll put them out as you can.
Rant installer?
original with the exception of one component, and, and it will, that's true, the key is
My
not
centipede
original.
had to be rewired early.
I should have still saved that crazy climber tabletop.
I live for my missile command machine. Oh my god.
Okay, the original TV monitor. I want to get the dust. Believe me, it's not dusty as it was when I found it.
We'll get you in there too. You got it, but I'm moving.
See the diodes for the ship animation?
Oh wow. You can see them on the board even.
Yeah. You've got to get, you've got to come around and get a picture of the original lacquer thinner can. It was used as the coin holder. There we go. We'll get you over. I got my problem. You guys are always down.
But the next gentleman we have is an even bigger saga than mine in his career. Worked with Arnie Katz and Joyce Worley in starting Electronic Games, done Inside Games, and honestly, if you look at his bio, 2-page spread, it's mind-boggling what the gentleman has done. So I'm going to let him tell a little bit about himself and his achievements, because I can't memorize that much. So let me present to you Bill Kunkel.
Well, fortunately for you guys, I can't remember it either. So, no, I've basically spent 20 years trying to keep from getting a job, and so far I've been successful. And I think the secret to that has been that I learned very early in this industry that if you want to stick around, you got to learn to do everything. I mean, let's see, writing books, press releases, testifying as an expert witness, starting magazines, launching websites. I mean, you know, the only thing I haven't done in 20 years, I can honestly say, is I've never programmed a line of code, and I never intend to. You know, with that out of the way, I had an idea. I'm not much at writing speeches and stuff, so I thought I would do a virtual slideshow for you. We're in the virtual age, so let's imagine there's a 3D screen behind me, and I'm going to flip the little slide projector here. The slides are all screwed up, so they're not in order. But the first slide coming up, this is me visiting Sunnyvale in 1981, the Atari headquarters. It is a city, folks. I mean, this is not a building. This is R&D for the 2600, for the next generation systems after the 2600, for Atari computers, and for Atari coin-ops. They're doing the R&D, they're doing the production. This place needed a monorail system. I have never seen anything like it in my life, and I think if Atari symbolizes gaming in a lot of ways to a lot of people in this room, it's because nothing, not even Nintendo at its biggest, ever had a city. I mean, this place was incredible. Watching them put together Red Baron machines in the coin-op department and going over and seeing championship soccer being developed, and the developer going out to his boss to tell him he was going to do it in a vertical scroll, and the boss telling him, you can't do a vertical scroll on the 2600. And he said, I'm glad you didn't tell me that last week. I learned a long time ago there are two kind of people in this business. There are the people who say, well, here are the rules, here's what you can do, and here's what you can't do. And there are the people who say, here's what I want to do, I'll find a way to do it. And I've been fortunate to meet a lot of those people. One of the next slide coming up here, I believe, is Jared Lanier, a name that may not be that familiar to a lot of people here. But he's the gentleman who coined the term virtual reality. But he didn't have the same idea about virtual reality that we do today. He came in to visit our offices, visit Arnie, Joyce, and I at Electronic Games headquarters. He showed up in a caftan with the wildest afro I'd ever seen in a white man. And he had a monitor set up and a little video camera. And so sit down in front of the video camera. I sit down, I look on the screen, there's a set of drums in front of me. It says, hit the drum. So I hit the drum and I hear a drum sound. Just keep hitting the drums. I'm playing bongos and playing drums. And I call this virtual reality. I said, oh, that's pretty cool, man. 10 years later, virtual reality was discovered by the rest of the world. And it was something different. And there were then 8 definitions for virtual reality, but when I think about it, I'm still sitting back in that office hitting those electronic bongos. At our office shower, we did so well with Electronic Games Magazine. This was the great success story, I think, of all of Arnie, Joyce, and my lives. I mean, we had this idea for a magazine, okay? We knew there were going to be magazines about games. There's always magazines about anything that people take as part of their lifestyle. The question was, could we get that magazine out first? And I remember a period, in those days it used to take a long time to get things published. You would write them, and by the time they'd appear on the newsstand, you'd read them and go, who the hell wrote this? It'd be, 5 months later or something. So we had about a 5-month stretch between when we first finished, put to bed, Electronic Games #1, and the day that it actually hit the stands. And I went out every day to the newsstand, truly expecting to see another magazine sitting there that had beat us. And every day I went, and that magazine was never there. Matter of fact, that magazine didn't turn up for about 6 months after our first issue appeared. So for 6 months, we were the gaming press. Of course, the gaming industry was a lot smaller in those days, but to be the gaming press, there were 3 people, and that was it, We would visit the 5 or 6 companies that were at CES that represented the entire game industry. And in 20 years, I watched that segment of the industry grow so large that CES could no longer hold them, and they had to start their own show. And we've now had, 4 years of E3. Thank God it'll never be in Atlanta again. The next picture is one of my special favorites. It's me defeating Trip Hawkins in a game of one-on-one. If you notice, he is crying. I remember the reports of the newsstand sales when Electronic Games went out. I remember one thing in particular. I remember getting a call back from the distributor saying that the newsstands wanted more copies. I think the last time the newsstands had asked for more copies of something was when Playboy ran a nude spread on Queen Elizabeth. So this was kind of an unusual thing. I think that was the moment that we knew that this was going to happen, that there was going to be a hobby called electronic gaming. And even in 1984, as bad as things got during the great fallout, shakeout, whatever you want to call it, I think we always had faith that it would come back. I remember a period so dark at the end of the last days of Electronic Games that we were forbidden editorially to use the word game in the magazine. They already changed the title to Electronic Entertainment, and at that point you really weren't supposed to be playing games. The only way you could play a game in 1985 was if it was a simulation. So flight simulators were born because it was the only way people could play games without being laughed at. I think, we discussed before the issue of will the game industry ever collapse again? And it's kind of like the Depression, we had the Depression, and people said, that was terrible. I don't think we ever want to have that again. So let's set up stuff, and let's make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I fully agree that it never will, that the industry is now so strong that it's as likely that the movie industry will die as it is that the electronic entertainment industry will die. I remember testifying. In fact, the next clip, I believe, it's the Game Genie case. I had a lot of sense. I was really smart about picking the companies I was going to testify against and for. First time was in 1982, when I testified for Magnavox against Atari. Probably not the best career choice one could have made. Yet I happen to believe that Odyssey was right. It involved a game called Casey Munchkin. I don't know if anybody remembers that game. But at the time, Atari had decided it paid damn good money for its Pac-Man license, and it was not going to allow any other gobble games to live on the face of the earth in any format on any machine. They originally went after all those small developers that had put out games like Ghost Chase, and every Jawbreaker, and I probably could think of 1,000, Piranha, a Snack Man, and here's one company, Odyssey, that develops a gobble game that's unique. The idea of this game is that the fewer dots are on the screen, the faster they move, and you've got to chase them around and catch them. To me, this was as major a step beyond the original game as, Galaxian had been past Space Invaders. I felt it was totally legitimate, so nobody at Atari talked to me for a couple of years, but the next guys I went up against were Nintendo. This was in about 1990, I guess, maybe 89, 90, when they were at the absolute height of their power. And I testified for those giants of the industry, Galoob. So my court, and yet I won 2 out of 3 of my cases, so I guess I didn't pick the totally wrong side.